Welcome, everyone. This is the inaugural edition of the Mojo AI Podcast. What it's about is we're having conversations with safety pros in the industry, people who know their stuff, who've got experience, and we just want to have a conversation with them, learn what makes them tick, how they got where they are, how they've run safety programs, what they see in the industry. My name is Jeff Panting. I'm the Director of Marketing here at Mojo AI. And I've got Henry Miranda from Kana Pipeline in California. And I've also got Corey Linton, the CEO of Mojo AI. If you could each just introduce yourself, and then we'll get into a discussion.
My name is Henry. I've been in the safety field for about 17 years in various industries, from nuclear, petrochemical, construction, and even some military. My most recent job is in the construction industry, which is completely different. It is a lot less regulated and a lot more risk involved, but through some of these innovative software, such as Safety Mojo, Mojo AI, we've been able to find stability and an improved trajectory with a reduced log rate, frequency rate, a lot of difficult times. The system has given us clarity on what to do, has given me time to focus. I couldn't be more excited to be here to do this as the first time.
Corey Linton, been in software for 25 years and started Mojo AI about 5 years ago and got into safety. We started it really wanting to do something in AI, and a couple years into it, realized that safety was this really interesting area where a lot of data was generated, but not a lot of sophisticated things done with the data. We just saw an opportunity to leverage that data to help reduce risk. So then I met Henry about 3 years ago and realized this is a really cool guy who knows his stuff.
Oh, thank you. So appreciate that.
Henry, can you tell us a little bit more about your career leading into safety, like how you got started there?
Yeah, I was in the military for 10 years in the Marine Corps. I was in the Marine Corps infantry from 98 to 2008. My last tour was a Marine combat instructor, became curriculum developer. Then from there, since the duty station, the School of Infantry, so close to the nuclear plant in San Onofre, transitioned. They were hiring veterans there, right, from one program to another. And so was it difficult to find a job there? When I transitioned there, it was, carrying a gun. I was an armed officer there. I was there for several years. The job was interesting. It paid well. It was basically security and compliance. And it was kind of a mixture of what I used to do in the Marine Corps with a twist, to make sure that people are doing kind of the right thing. Not so much from an occupational industry environment yet, but that would soon be following after that, because that's kind of piqued my interest in this whole compliance realm. So from there, the hours were steady and the work was a bit boring.
Yeah.
I carried a gun. I didn't want to do that for the rest of my life, so I looked for a job somewhere else. And I found a job at the refineries up and down the LA Basin for a company called Veolia.
Okay.
They are a subcontractor in the refineries that help with the maintenance. They have these things called turnarounds, where they shut parts of the refinery down. They will hydroblast either the walls or certain tubes. The hydroblast process is pretty dangerous. The pressure that this water comes out at is enough to take wind off. So they needed a safety person to kind of manage the risk there. And then while that's being hydroblasted, there's offset water that comes out. The water needs to be vacuumed. And so the vacuuming is at such strength that it can actually suck parts of your body into, if not careful. So they have a lot of safeguards there. They call them brake tees and that sort of thing. And so I did that for about 5 years. And being in that environment where the system was already built, there wasn't a lot of creativity there. I just had to have a good work ethic, endurance, kind of bearing, tact, right? So I can speak to people in an office and speak to people in the vacuum truck, kind of blend that together. But there wasn't a lot of build it things going on there. It was already built, and I just kind of swam right into the stream.
Okay.
And I found another opportunity, at this time as a safety director in construction. So I applied for a job. I
Was this Kana?
Kana Pipeline.
Okay.
I applied in 2013. I got hired in 2013. The day I interviewed, the day they offered me the job. When I got there, it was a totally different environment. I remember when I worked at the refineries, we would go to these safety events. It was either the National Safety Council.
Okay.
These things that sometimes they would happen in Texas and New Orleans. And when we would go, you would have the room kind of split in two where there's a keynote speaker. And so on the left side of the room, you would have the general industry guys. Those are the guys that work in everything but construction. And on the right side, you'd have the construction industry guys. Because you usually go with a group. My group was the refinery guys. Their group was the construction guys. So this is before I got the job at Kana. And as I would sit here listening to this keynote speaker, near the end, they would give an opportunity for questions. And I would hear the questions that came out of this side of the room, and I thought, yeah, I can't imagine working in a place like that.
Oh, wow.
We don't have that problem here. Can you believe that? Well,
You can just see the difference in safety sophistication.
big difference in the culture, everything, from the amount of oversight to the amount of resistance from the workers themselves on balancing the polar pole between production and safety.
Right.
There is a dynamic there that if you don't lead it right, it creates this division of labor. And so it was very clearly there, where in our side of the room, it was the blanket where the operation rested on was the safety thing. So it's two schools of thought where it's either you are the ops guy and you're the safety guy, and the two shall never meet. I have my thing, you do your thing. That's a way. The other way is
And there's going to always be tension between the two.
always,
Right? They're always pushing each other.
always competing factors there.
Yeah.
And then you have the other one where the operations team owns the safety effort,
Mm-hmm.
and it's the fertile ground where the operation takes place. And so that's what it was like in the refinery. Though I will tell you that at the time when I was there, I still had frustrations, but they pale in comparison to the frustrations that one experiences in the construction industry. Completely different environment. And so when I got the job, and mind you, I have to preface this, I love the place where I work. I'm very fond of the owner. I'm very fond of the company, the people I work with, but it was very difficult. When I got there,
Were you the first safety guy that hired?
no, there was other safety guys there. Let me give you some history.
Sure.
First, the owner was a safety guy back in the 80s. And the only reason he was a safety guy is because he was told, you have to have safety guys. So he said, fine, I'll do that. And then he said, no, I don't want that job. So he gave it to another guy. That guy was risky. So he said, no, I can't be that guy. Let's give it to another guy. So they hired a gentleman named Tim Banks. Great safety guy. I saw his notes. He's very good. I learned a lot from his notes. Very thorough. He ended up getting another job. He moved, I think, somewhere in Southwest. I don't know. Somewhere. He left the company, moved out of state. Then they hired a woman who, my understanding is she was only there for about 2 months. And she just disappeared. Left the computer, left the truck. It just did not come back.
And none of these things gave you hesitation about
I didn't know
taking the job. Okay.
I didn't know these things. I didn't know these things. until
Otherwise, they probably would have.
they would have, right? I got interviewed. I didn't do an interview, right? Because just because you can work somewhere doesn't mean you should.
Right.
Though I wouldn't change a thing today, given what I've been through. So I really learned what it was like. I really learned to be a safety professional in this company, at Kana. When I got there, it was very resistant. There was open enforcement actions where things had, OSHA had showed up to the job, issued citations. Citations had been appealed. The appeal deadlines had been missed, a couple of those. And so my job was to try to get that under control. So I had to submit a plea to the appeals board saying, hey, we had some internal operating difficulties. The transition of personnel from one to another led to the deadline being missed. And their response was, your internal operating difficulties are not our problem. Right, essentially.
So you're trying to say, sorry, we missed it. Please open it up again. And they basically said
They
no.
basically said no. And so, mind you, I've never dealt with OSHA
Okay.
enforcement. I dealt with OSHA consultation, which is a different branch.
Sure.
There's several branches of 3 actually that I'm familiar with. Consultation is the ones that kind of help you come to speed on certain things. Enforcement is different. This is my first interaction with enforcement. So that was the first of 6 enforcement engagements that I've had in the construction industry. My first construction job, I cut my teeth there with enforcement. They call them COSHOs, construction health and safety officers.
Okay.
So that's one aspect of the work. Then you have the cultural aspects. When I got there, the job was tough. I mean, the people there, Kana Pipeline has a lot of tenured employees there. They've been there since the 1980s.
Both on the front line and back office?
Right. In the office and in the trench, there's guys that still have single-digit employee numbers. Like number 1, number 2, number 9. They're still there.
So they've been there for 30 years.
30 years, right? 30 years. And some of them just had a different way. They would come to the job with shorts, no shirt, they would wear tennis shoes. It was normal. It's not normal anymore.
And this was 2013?
No. When I'm speaking of that era, that was when inception.
Oh, okay.
1980s.
At the beginning. Okay.
1980s, when the construction industry was a different environment, it was normal to show up. No vest, no hard hat. The hard hat thing happened, and that was a big change. There was talks of, I will leave if you make me wear a hard hat. And the owner said, well, you go ahead. Go. It's okay. We'll get somebody that wears it. Nobody left. Next day, they wore a hard hat. Now everybody wears a hard hat. Now we're actually going to helmets with chin straps, and it's just different. Things have changed.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to create a broad stroke picture with enforcement, with culture. Both of those things indicate that there's a rough climate there where rules are not being followed. Some don't even exist. The ones that do exist are probably misworded, misguided, not communicated, certainly not followed. And so we had to find a way to structure that. We built the rules. Then it was time to communicate them and then hold them accountable. So what I've learned there throughout my time is that a company's safety performance can be found at the apex, where its rules meet, in contrast with its accountability level and its recognition of employees for job well done. Where
so accountability, recognition, and rules.
Right. Where those 3 things intersect, if you have a solid set of rules, I'm not talking abundant, I'm talking strongly worded rules that
clear, concise,
follow, right? That make sense to your organization. For example, the state requires, or Cal should require certain things with confined space. Just because they require these things doesn't mean you can't go above it or change it, as long as what you're doing is well within the bounds. You can't do less than what they ask for, but you can change it to familiarize your people in a better way that's more commensurate with the work you do.
Okay.
So if you have those types of rules, and they're strongly worded rules and well communicated, and people understand them and they make sense to them, and then when you go and visit the jobs and see that they're doing a good job or not doing a good job, and you do something on both cases, whether they're doing well or not doing well.
That's the accountability and the recognition.
That's right.
Accountability if they're not, recognition.
That's right.
If they are.
That's right. And so the more you do the accountability, the more you do the recognition when the rule is or is not met, that's where the safety culture lives. That will tell you how well you're doing. That's essentially what I've learned over the last 10 years. You want a good safety culture, strong rules, good accountability, strong recognition for your employees that are doing a good job, constant recognition. So what I'm saying is, you have the accountability piece where you hold an employee accountable, usually has an instant effect. When you have a guy that does a good job and you recognize him often, it changes his behavior a little bit slower, but it lasts longer.
Okay.
Whereas you hold a guy accountable, he will change the behavior, but if not continually
like more as a reaction.
He will go back to the old behavior.
Yeah, one of the common things in Safety Mojo are safety observations. And all of our customers with really good safety track records and improvement like Kana, they all have a balance of positive recognition and observations of hazards.
Yeah.
Everyone.
You have to, for many reasons, not the least of which is that's what drives the culture of the safety effort, right? Not to mention that every now and then I'll just show them to the job and they ask for records. If you don't have those records, then you're not doing the thing they require. And if you're not doing the thing they require, you get enforcement action. And Mojo's a great repository because you can filter easy. You can when you submit these things, they're drop down. They're very user friendly, not only for the people that are using the app in the field, but also it helps spread or express the data in a way that makes sense to the C-suite. It compiles the data in such a way where, because they don't understand what you do. They don't understand. They just want to know, they're focused on the bond rate, the enforcement action, the total recordable injury rate, and the loss rate. How do you get there? They have no clue. There's no clue. Well, Mojo can help paint a picture on how you do that. By volume of audits, by percentage of compliance, non-compliance, employees recognized, held accountable, all of that is maintained in the system.
Yeah.
So, Henry, I remember you were telling me in the early days, when you were at Kana, you were battling a lot of cultural issues.
Yeah.
And I remember you said one time, when the guys learned that you really cared, you weren't just there being a jerk, but that really helped start to shift things.
Yeah, it takes a long time to do. And you're right. Once the people know, you're not the fifth guy who will eventually lead to, like first the owner, then his other guy, then the girl who left, and the other safety guy that left. Once
so they have this history of turnover. So they were used to, I'm going to be a jerk and you'll quit.
And you'll quit, right?
Yeah.
They had the girl who, she probably got ran off the job. She just left. Keys, computer, everything was locked up, never came back. They mailed her last check. She just never came back.
She just
disappeared. Right, and I can see why. It's because there's a character set there at the beginning where it's tough. But I've learned too that, you have to be willing to go more than 50% regularly. I think Barbara Bush said that. She was asked one day, how do you make that marriage last so long? You have to be willing to go further than 50%. It's so true. For example, the project managers, right? Every company has a different structure. Some companies have what they call general superintendents. What we have is project managers that act both as a project manager and a general superintendent. They have a dual role. Those guys, they because they have a hybrid responsibility, they're focused on not only production but also procurement. There's a lot that goes on there, and so every now and then they'll say, "Hey, how do I do X, Y, Z?" Sometimes they'll say, "Hey, can you? I don't really know how to short this. This is a complicated thing. We've got lines crossing. There's traffic along the side." And we have to go and siphon and do different elevation. So what I'll do is I'll get the answer for them, get a quote for them, and send it to them, and a proposal for the plan. And so I didn't have to do that. That's not my job. But when you do that, it shows, oh wow. And if you do that over and over and over, of course it's burdensome. It's burdensome to do, but it helps build the credibility that you actually care. You're not just a guy asking for some new thing.
Yeah.
You're actually trying to find a way to relieve them of the burden of time. Time's important in construction, right? And so if you can find a way to do that, it helps build your credibility meter. And that credibility meter has to be used judiciously. Because the more stuff you pile onto the plate, the lower that gets. And the lower that gets, the less street credibility you have. And so the more you extend yourself out, now mind you, it's a thin rope, right? Because sometimes you don't want to get too much in their thing, especially if it costs money, right? If I bought the shoring, that's a different deal. But if you do the legwork for them, right, it's a balance, right?
Okay.
So one thing I've from our conversations with other people, one way I describe Safety Mojo is it takes the administrative work away so you can focus on the stuff that you as a safety pro really want to do, right? Because you like being out working with people. You don't like being in an office tallying and counting and all that stuff. And just, share your thoughts on that. That's how I've often thought about it. Is that off or is that
so true? So true. When I first got there, everything was paper and spreadsheets. And I had a gal that used to work in the front office. I had asked her if she can give me an hour or two of every day in the morning so that she can reach out to each superintendent and say, hey, can I get this paper? The daily task hazard analysis plan. And she would chase them down, and they sometimes wouldn't answer. And so then she'd send an email, and there would be like a list, an email sent with the guys that did it and the guys that didn't do it. Now I have to interact. And so now there's time on her day, time on my day, all to chase this piece of paper that most of the time they just penciled it anyway. And I was just at least trying to get it so that if I ever had a document, it was had it. Because that's an important thing too.
Yeah.
There's two reasons for that paper. One is for that, the document request. The other one is you can really use it as a tool. But to your point is you're chasing this thing down. It's an administrative burden. It's time that you can be used much better. You could be using it to drive to the jobs and visit the people. The ideal safety person's time distribution should be 30-70. 70% of your time should be spent in the field.
Okay.
Not chasing paper, right? Not chasing paper. So sometimes you're married to the office, but with a software option like Mojo, where it's simple and it's organized, it helped relieve that lady of her time. It helped organize my thoughts. It helped give the superintendent something easy to use that's color-coded, drop-down, easily selectable. It's easy to filter and track if I ever do get that document request. Everything about the platform, from the user interface to the metrics that it chose to the freedom it gives me to focus on other things, has been quite effective for my effort. I would argue and say, we looked at a few. We looked at those from the National Safety Council. We looked at other softwares that were out there. But the coolest thing about Mojo is that it's so simple. You can create the form. It's drop-down fields. You can geofence people to certain companies so they can only see a certain thing. You don't have to do that if you don't want to. It houses training. It houses job site-specific safety information. There's so much to it, and it's easily digestible. That's the best part of the system.
So how when you started, so you were driving your teams to do paper stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and when you shifted over to digital, was it like, how was that? Was that like, were they excited?
It was.
I mean, this was 2016, 2017?
17.
Okay, so about 7 years ago.
Most of the guys said about time. They
Really?
were just
In 2017.
about time. That's right. One of the most difficult supervisors when I first got there told me about time we did this. Now I'll change your paper in because it's easy.
Now I'll do it even after me.
He was holding out for years.
Right. Because I mean, to do the paper first of all, it's you have to handwrite it, and it's all based.
Yep.
Most of it is the same as yesterday's. It's not okay for them to copy it, change the date, and send it. It doesn't work. I mean, the state will catch on to that. I will catch on to that. They're not really using the tool for its intended purpose.
Right.
It's got a function, and it's going to be a powerful tool. And so this system has a much easier way to do that. And so it takes the time, gives it to them back, and it allows them to do the work. That's what they're there for. They put pipe in the ground.
Okay, so have you seen our conversational forums?
In very overview.
Okay, so think about that morning safety.
Mm-hmm.
So you have a foreman, they fill out your form, and they talk to the team, right? Of filling out the form and talking to the team.
Mm-hmm.
What's the most important part of that process?
The talking to the team part.
Right? And interacting
Talking to the team part, right.
So one of the things we're really excited about with our AI is instead of filling out the form, you talk to your team about tasks, hazards, controls. We listen, and then we actually go fill out the form for you and show it to you filled out. So the focus now becomes on you communicating with the team. That's the focus. Our AI is going to fill out the form for you.
I'll tell you, we have three types of foremen. We have a foreman that does it the day before in preparation for the following morning. He will get it ready at home or sometime before 7 a.m. That form's ready. And so then all he has to do is talk about it. We have another foreman that does it probably by 8 or 9 a.m. And then we have another foreman that'll do it on Friday, for Thursday, Wednesday, Tuesday, and Monday. He didn't do the paper, but he knows I'm going to hound him on it. So, right? So I imagine that if you can click a button and say, hey, I'm on this job, I'm 13 feet deep, I'm installing storm drain, I've got 4 people, I need XYZ, I have these conditions, I have several contractors in the way, and then hit send, right? And it generates that for you, that would be great.
That's exactly how it works. And the whole focus of it is to have the foreman start really thinking about communicating with my team effectively, because that's the most important part, right? We'll document it for you.
You know what's cool? Is if a foreman can say, hey, labor, look at how easy this is.
Yeah.
And have the labor under his supervision say, hey, tell it what we're
Why
doing.
don't you lead the meeting today?
Yeah. Why don't you lead the meeting? Tell it what you think is important. just push the button, talk to it. And that's such a coaching opportunity.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. And then it's going to come up, and they get a look at it.
Yeah.
And they don't, until they hit submit, they can correct, and then hit submit.
That would be really cool.
Yeah.
You're allowing the non-supervisor, the rank and file, to contribute
Yeah.
to the safety effort.
Which increases their engagement, right? I mean, you've been to these meetings where some guy drones off for 10 minutes and all your guys are like on their phone flipping through Facebook or something.
If they even have me.
Yeah.
And it's structured right so that you have task, column 1, hazard, column 2, control, column 3, and it matches.
Yeah. Oh, it's pretty cool. I could actually show you right now.
That'd be cool.
It won't be as cool listening to it.
All right.
Yeah.
I'll show you after.
Okay. Fair enough.
I wanted to ask you a couple questions going back to when you started at Kana.
Yeah.
You came in, paper processes, history of terrible safety managers, terrible compliance. You said, two of the pillars are enforcement and engagement or?
Enforcement is one of them. Incident management is another. So for example, making sure that when you can't control when the state shows up to your door, but you can try to control what they see.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way to do that is to get out to the job as frequently as possible and ensure that the rules that you set, those strong rules we talked about in the beginning, are well communicated, checked, held accountable, or recognized for doing or not doing.
Mm-hmm.
And if you do that and communicate it regularly, that begins to turn the rudder. Because everybody knows that, okay, here comes these 2-3 guys. They could probably show up 2 to 3 times a week to my job. I don't want to end up on the naughty list. Let's just do it. Let's just do what he's asking for us. It starts that way. And then eventually, if you incentivize it right, it becomes a way of being, like blinking. You don't even notice it. Now people show up to the job and they're engaged, especially with this AI thing. That'd be super helpful. That's one pillar. The other pillar is, I would say, incident management. Incidents happen. Incidents happen on the job. They're going to happen. Some minor, some near misses, some major. If you're doing it right, each incident should get a response. Mind you, for example, there's the car accident that happened off the 91 freeway. Just you can't get to. You can't respond to it. I understand. But if you have an incident like an injury, you attend that. If you have a utility that was damaged, an underground line, you attend that. If there was a theft, you need to call the cops. You need to report that. There's things that you should be doing, but that if you're chasing paper, they're not going to have the time to manage to do it. And so that's, I would say, pillar 2. Pillar 3, I would say, is training. And I think Mojo, from my experience with it, has a great platform for training. It has a way to house it. It creates a badge for an employee with a QR code. All you have to do is take a picture of that QR code. Any client can do that and see what training he's got. Very helpful. And I would say that the 4th pillar for me is orienting the leadership of the company to leading indicators. That, I think, is probably the most beneficial one for a safety person, because that's what's going to prove, that's what's going to make the change. The owner will focus on the mod rate all day long, but nothing will change by looking at the number. If you can orient them to the key indicators that do change, for example, how many guys went out to the field and trained? You can control that. How many times did the safety guys go out? You can control that. What was the compliance number? How many guys were recognized? How many guys were held accountable? You can control all of it. And with Mojo, you can put it on a graph on one sheet and show a dashboard of sorts to the owner. And now it makes sense to them because it's got the header, you can put it in pillars. Which pillar is this? One of the 4 pillars. And then make it make sense to them. And suddenly now you'll see the mod rate begin to drop because you're doing these other things.
Right. So when you started, before you had Mojo in place, did you have good support from the top of the organization to help get you going, or did it take time there too?
I had stated support. They told me that they're behind me. But I hadn't earned the trust to be able to spend any money on a capital expense like that. I just didn't have it. So was I supported? Yes. Was the owner there anytime I called him? Yes. But I couldn't hire a new safety guy. I couldn't get any software. At best, I can get the front office lady's time for 2 hours a day. But in time, I was able to get it. And I think it came through, well, a couple of those things. It was extending myself out, making sure that people understood that I truly did care, go outside the boundary of my job and do something for them, build relationships. That helped kind of strengthen my reputation, lack of better terms. And then once the owner saw that, then he gave it more of a thought. Like, well, okay, this guy's sticking around. He's going to be here clearly. All right, tell me about the software. And I would tell him it's this much. Well, and then I told him, well, if we save on the lady's front office time, right, then that pays for 75% of it. All right, try it for a year first, and then we'll see how it goes. And then we tried Mojo, and it worked out. And then slowly we began to see a decline in the mod rate. And once that happened, once the mod rate went down, then the brakes were off.
I think it was the second year it went down.
When I got Mojo, it was 2016, 17.
Yeah.
And the mod rate really began to change 2017, 18.
Yeah.
And it was, I know that the mod rate calculations are interesting because they're a 3-year trailer. But you can have a net effect that's a little more abrupt based on how you deal with the adjusters. So if you can control the adjusters, reserve them out, you can have a pretty substantial and quick outcome on the mod rate just by that alone, let alone the prevention effort. And so when that began to happen, now I had a zero. And then we were able to get more things like GPS in the trucks. And we've got a new program that we're using to help with utility damage prevention strategy.
Oh yeah, you told me.
Oh yeah, right. So it takes geographical data, kind of puts you in a boundary, and it colors that boundary either red because things are not right, yellow because they're almost right, or green because you've met all the things that whatever the process is. And, very cool. Very cool stuff.
Yeah, because utility strikes are expensive.
Very, very expensive. They can also be very gainful too. If you hit a line and it wasn't your fault, you can backcharge the utility. A lot of people don't do that. Every time. I don't want to say the utility, but we're 4 for 4.
Backcharging utilities? Because if you do it right and you have blue stakes measured out, then
blue stakes or big alert or whatever your state calls it.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. If you did the process, you waited the right amount of time, you respected the marks as they were marked on the ground, and you still hit something because the marks are off, somebody's going to bill. And it ain't you. It's either the utility or whoever marked for the utility. And that's, downtimes and delays can be costly.
Yeah.
You feel like they're going for $38,000 from one of these utilities.
wow.
$38,000.
So I've got a question because I've heard safety people say if you pay attention to safety, you're going to pay more attention to quality and everything else. What's your view on that? Does paying more attention to safety, doing things safe, impact quality and production?
That's an interesting question. We have had some quality challenges this year. In California, well, you know what the economy's like.
Yeah.
The residential market has gone down substantially. Residential hotness has gone away. Builders, home builders, last year were not building. Projects that were started were stopped for whatever the reason. Interest rates went up. Nobody wanted to buy. Nobody wanted to build. That whole market has shifted. Now we're in public works or commercial industrial. When you're talking about quality, in order to really mesh those two, a few things have to happen. First, whoever is responsible for that, you have to make sure that they're a tenured person, that they know what they're doing. You can't have a new guy responsible for quality. You certainly can't have an unexperienced safety guy in the field responsible for quality either. Though he can probably check one or two things. He doesn't know how tight those bolts need to be, how high the grade needs to be, how close the string line needs to be. There's so many things to it. What it does help you with is organization and planning. Because you know that the safety guy's going to come, and that helps your quality.
Wow.
Right?
Because you know they're going to be checked on?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's what I see. Now, again, the quality piece and the safety piece, they do go hand in hand, but it's a little more complicated. And I think people overlook that. I think, yes, they can marry. I think probably the best advantage for a safety guy is a safety guy who came from the field, who knows how to lay pipe, who has turned safety guy, because he can check both. Right? But that's hard to find. Yeah. Those are hard to find. If you find one of those guys, I have one. I have one of those guys.
I've been curious too, your process of building a safety program from nothing to pretty good. Like, what changes when you've got to a good state, but you want to continue improving? Like, do you do anything differently? Do you focus on different things?
We're there now. So there was this, I don't remember who made the graph. I think it was a company named DuPont. I don't remember. It's a graph.
DuPont Bradley curve.
Yeah, the DuPont Bradley
Yeah.
safety curve.
Right. It kind of shows the evolution.
Yeah, the safety
Four
culture
stages.
and how
Right.
incidents
Right.
decrease.
And so we've gone from completely reactive to more interdependent, and now we want to move to fully independent. We're probably at the cusp.
I think independent is the third, and interdependent is the highest. Where you watch each other, but you feel like you're in the third, and you want to move to the fourth.
We're in the transition between the second, moving into the third, and I think we are not. Once you're there, it's not far. It's not hard to move into the fourth.
Yeah.
Here's what to answer your question. So once you've stabilized and you've made it good, how to get it better? I think there's only one way to do that, and that's to involve the rank and file. I think it needs to be as normal as blinking.
Yeah.
It needs to be part of the thing. It needs to be pitched by the director of construction, every project manager, every laborer. It can't be relegated to two people. Your two field safety guys. You can't do that. You will never, it's like whack-a-mole. There's always going to be one other mole that pops up, some other thing that comes up, until everybody gets involved. And so I have an idea. This year, we're going to roll it out to every non-supervisor, a function in safety mode, actually. It's an audit, so it's not an audit, that's the wrong word. An observation, where there's basically two categories. They can submit either a recommendation or a recognition of a person or a crew or a group. Those are the positive things. And then you have a near miss or an unsafe act or condition. The thing with those is you have to make it incentivized, and not necessarily with money, but I think in the construction field predominantly, it will be looked at as a negative thing. If you roll this thing out, it can be looked at as a snitch program. I know it. It'll be looked at as, I imagine that in a company-wide meeting, the safety guy is pitching this and saying, hey, everybody pull out your phone, I'm going to give you your username and password. Here's how you use the thing. Every supervisor is going to think, you better not do that. You better not do that. Everybody that's on it's going to be a problem. And so, and God's going to hear it. So you have to find a way to deconstruct that. And so it has to come with, in my opinion, a level of amnesty, so that no matter what gets sent in, there's amnesty, right? Nobody gets in trouble. It also has to come with, like an instant response. In somehow, some way, this must be monitored in such a way where if something comes up that's a new, you have to respond to that. It's a series of social showings. If you are going to get from good to great, you have to respond to this as if it were an injury. That way people have credibility with it. And it has to be done consistently. And so from good to great, I think the involvement of everybody, for us, comes through an option through Safety Mojo where it allows the rank and file to do a thing. That thing comes with amnesty. It can also come with anonymity. In other words, if you, the employee, don't want to tell the administrator that you, the employee, submitted it, there should be an option here to submit it anonymously. What I was thinking was we extend the button to everybody, and then we extend a link through somewhere else so that they can get into a standard account, not their own account.
So they can do anonymous.
They get anonymous.
How we have clients doing that, and they have
Anonymous would be great.
You can go in as with your name,
Or anonymous.
or you can do it anonymously.
Right. That way there's no skin in the game. That way they can't get.
If they're afraid to say it,
That's right.
you still want them to say
That's
it.
right.
So you had mentioned that you guys tried this in third quarter, which is typically the worst quarter.
That's right.
And what were the results? So where you push the frontline teams to engage and do safety observations.
That's right. We tried this before COVID. The year prior to COVID, we tried this out. And so usually year over year, quarter three tends to be our most difficult year, quarter. Year over year, quarter three tends to be the most frequent incident growth. So I made a suggestion to the owner that we could have a 90-day challenge, what we call it. And so He said, okay, well, give me an ROI. What is it like? So I put it together. I gave it to him. He said, okay, how much do you want? 25,000. He said, okay. Didn't even bat an eye. Okay. You think it'll work? Yeah, it'll work. So we rolled this thing out, and we had, now mind you, it was a 3-stage bonus. I mean, it was a little complicated. We had one for drivers, one for non-supervisors, and one for supervisors. And the non-supervisor piece was at a 5th place, 4th place, 3rd place, 2nd place, 1st place, all of which were either $3,000, $2,500, $2,000, $1,500, $1,000, $500, based on the amount of contribution they had on this particular form. The form could have been a near miss, a recommendation, an unsafe act, or an unsafe condition, right? So when the employees first started, they were only submitting recommendations or recognition of the approval. They would say, okay, Henry, I know you had said you wanted the confined space stuff. We have it all up. There it is. Send. They never submitted an unsafe act because they were afraid. They never submitted an unsafe condition. They just didn't want to deal with that. And that's okay for now. That's how you start. What we experience, the way we experience that in the back quarter is not only did we have a lower than normal 3-month period, because every employee wanted the 5th, the 4th, the 3rd, the 2nd, or the 1st place money. That's serious money. And it happened to come right by Christmas. It was Q3. It was going to be handed out October, November. So suddenly they became focused and engaged on this thing, there was a lot of haters that said, you know what? I don't want my guys spending time taking pictures all day. Look at what you're doing. You're incentivizing them wasting time on this phone. That was a thing. It's a snitch program. You got to turn the crew against itself. That was a thing. It was, this ain't going to work. How are you going to, what if everybody submits 100 pictures? How are you going to take break, all of these things we've kind of dealt one at a time.
Yeah.
But what happened was we had a lower frequency, not only for the quarter, but it was our best quarter ever since I've been at Kana. I mean, I have the log to prove it. I have the data to show.
Wow.
Usually January, February, March is our slowest for some reason. I don't know why. Maybe because of the rain. There's less work because of the rain. It was better than Q1. In Q3.
So more.
The year before COVID was our best quarter.
More work, but better safety.
More work, more. I think what it does is raises situational awareness. And it helps you focus.
Yeah.
For whatever the reason, the money, the whatever.
And observations are powerful because you don't just have a checklist. Check. You actually have to look around and find something, right? You have to mentally engage with your surroundings.
Mm-hmm. And some guys felt really scared to do it. They would have to hide because their foremen were like, if I see that, I'm not coming back tomorrow.
Really?
If I do it, but if I ever see it.
Yeah. Right. So it took some shepherding and some fostering and some steering in the right direction, but it worked.
Yeah.
And we're going to do that again, but not for the quarter. We're going to do it for the year. We're in dialogue about what the financial piece is going to be. There's going to be an incentive of sorts. I don't know what it will look like. It could be a TV. It could be first, second, third place. I don't know. It could be a trip to the Angels game.
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see. But the cool thing is that the owner saw the results, and now that we're beyond COVID and back to normal, he's willing to do it again.
That's cool.
Well, that's fantastic.
Right.
I've got a few other questions I'd like to ask just to get your input more on the industry in general, the career of safety in general. What do you think are the top 3 or 5 qualities of a good safety professional?
So I would say you have to have endurance. So you have to be able to stick to it. Because there's going to be days that are terrible. Some days are better than others, but you get up and you try. Some days you just don't want to do it anymore, but you come back. So you have to have endurance. You have to be able to persevere. I would say the other one is you have to have an understanding that there is a fine line between requirement and relationship. Sometimes, as a safety person, you gotta let shit go. And that's okay. Sometimes you gotta let shit go. Sometimes you don't. And so you have to have an understanding of when to do that. And it's as much science as it is art.
Kind of like parenting.
Kinda.
Right? Sometimes you gotta let you go. And maybe it's hard.
Yeah.
Because man, that pissed me off.
Right. Sometimes you gotta let shit go. So the number 1, endurance. 2, an understanding between the requirement relationship piece. I would say another one is you have to be a great communicator. You cannot be nervous in front of a crowd of 300. You have to be able to be okay with it. Questions are going to come. You're not going to know the answer. Sometimes you're going to get put in difficult spots. It's part of it. And it's okay. It's okay for you to say, you know what? I fucked that up. Okay, but you know what? Let me change that. I'll get back. Whatever it is. In fact, that can be contagious if you do that. I've learned that one time I was in a room with a project manager and he said, you know, this asbestos thing, we never used to take pipe out like that. And look what you're doing. Every subcontractor that we've hired over here to do this work, which we used to do ourselves, now because you're wanting this, whatever this is, they don't even bring the right tools in. What are you going to do? And the owner was there. And my response to that was, you know what, man, you're right. I don't know. I know this. I know the rule. I know what's at stake if we don't follow the rule. I'm trying to find as many bids as I can with different vendors to do the work. I found the expensive ones. I found the cheap ones. I found the middle of the road ones. None of them seem to get it right. I don't know what to do. So the owner jumped in and said, we're not going there. What do you need from us? So it became contagious. It spread to him. Then the rest of them kind of disarmed the room. It suddenly became intense because I was willing to say, I don't know. I'm sorry. You're right. I see it. So you have to be able to do that. That's 3. The 4th one, you have to care about the people. You have to care about the people. I mean, you can do the job and not care, but you won't be happy. You won't put your heart into it, and people will know. And they will drive you mad. They will drive you out of the job.
And won't they, as soon as you turn away, they're just going to break the rules, right?
It's true.
They don't respect you.
Well, they will do that either way. Whether you care about them or not, they will do that either way. But I've learned that if you care, that tends to spread too. And what does care look like? That means that when one of the foremen has a death in the family, you ask me that, is when one of them has a baby, maybe you go. When one of them's kid gets arrested in TJ and needs bail money, sometimes you help them.
I think you're sharing things you've actually been through.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Wow.
Right? These are things that show people you care. Like you have to be caring. Maybe sometimes that's out of line. I don't know. I have a great relationship with Philippines. I think that is one of my strongest points. At my company, at Kana, that's what I'm looking for. Strong relationships and the ability to move the work. So that's 4. And I would probably say the 5th one.
And all those relationships, the ability to hold people accountable, they have a big impact on that.
Well, that's the 5th one. That's the 5th one. Sometimes you have to have hard conversations. And when you do that, it has to be respectful. It has to be caring and tactful and firm and non-negotiable. Just as much as you sometimes have to let shit go. Sometimes you don't. And, you know, we had one of our stronger superintendents had a problem with the truck. Big issue with the truck. It was a hard conversation. And, you know, you have to treat it the same way as if it was a labor, a non-productive labor, because it has to be equal. Now, mind you, I understand there is a difference there. There is a difference here. That a guy that's tenured and he's been around and he's a revenue earner, I get it. Mm-hmm. But, you know, there has to be fairness. And so difficult conversation have to happen. It's just a part of the job. I think those would probably be the 5 best qualities that a safety person can have to build the reputation, the credibility, to assist in increasing the effort.
Do you think that those are things people can learn, or is it kind of inherent to, you know, some people have the right personality for this and some don't?
Both. I would say both. I think some people could probably be capped at that. Mm-hmm. Some people work better with 13 things flying at them. Some would rather have an email. It depends on the person. I think it can be fostered. I think it can be built. I think it can be enhanced. I think people can change. It just takes time. It takes inner work, meditation sometimes. I don't know, whatever your thing is, Jim. Something to help challenge yourself. Because sometimes those are challenging things to do.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for your time, Henry. It was great to have you here and
Likewise.
kind of learn about your experience, your career, and how you approach safety.
Yeah.
Thank you, Corey, for being here too.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff and Henry. It's always a pleasure.
No, likewise. It was such a privilege to be here. Thank you so much.
Yep.
Hey, look at it.